Hey, church family. Today we continue in our examination of verses dealing with anger. Before we dig into Proverbs 19:11, reflect back on this past week. What are some things that took place that angered you or caused you frustration? Could have been an annoying child who wouldn't listen to your instruction. Could have been someone that pulled out rudely in front of you. It could have been something not happening in the time in which you wanted it to happen. All of those things are things that don't happen according to our plan, and ultimately that's what causes anger. Anger is frustration at things not happening when we want them to happen. And as we consider these memory verses through the month of January on anger, allow the Holy Spirit to work in your life to cause there to be more patience and prudence to wait on God's timing in all things. Well, our verse for this week is Proverbs 19:11, and here is what Proverbs 19:11 says. Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. I don't know about you, but as I've been looking at Proverbs 19:11, particularly in the ESV, I found it a little hard to grasp what the writer of Proverbs was trying to communicate in this proverb. So here are what some other translations, how they translate Proverbs 19:11. One translation says, a man's discretion makes him slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook a transgression. Another translation says, sensible people control their temper. They earn respect by overlooking wrongs. Another translation says, a man's wisdom gives him patience. It is to his glory to overlook an offense. One last one. Smart people know how to hold their tongue. Their grandeur is to forgive and forget. So as we think through the point of Proverbs 19:11, Matthew Henry gives two principles that we can pull away from this proverb that apply to us. The first is that we are not to be over hasty in our anger. And we see that in the first line. Good sense makes one slow to anger. The second principle that Proverbs 19 teaches is not to be overcritical in our anger. And notice that second line, the writer says, it is his glory to overlook an offense. As we think through that first line of good sense making one slow to anger, one commentator writes this about how we can understand this good sense. He says, the virtue which is indicated here is more than a forgiving temper. It includes also the ability to shrug off insults and the absence of a brooding hypersensitivity. It is the ability to deny to an adversary the pleasure of hearing a yelp of pain, even when his words have inflicted a wound. It contains elements of toughness and self-discipline. It is the capacity to stifle a hot emotional response and to sleep on an insult. So, if I'm understanding Proverbs 19:11 correctly, what we are encouraged to do here is to not be so sensitive when people insult or frustrate or when things happen in our lives that cause us anger, to not be so hypersensitive to react in anger to those situations. To step back and to have good sense, to keep our heads when there are things that come up in our life that make us angry. And finally, this last phrase, it is his glory to overlook an offense. We could think of that word glory as adornment or beauty. It doesn't really seem appetizing for us to overlook something that we could be angry about when we could be angry about it. It's rather drab. But the writer here in Proverbs tells us that it is a beautiful thing, that it is something glorious when we overlook that offense. And so as we are even-tempered, as we are patient in our anger, it is a beautiful thing, not just in the sight of God, but to those around us. So brothers and sisters, this week, let's be people who are seeking to be patient rather than angry.